And I caught it in time this time. I realized that the mic was muted this time, and I don't know why that keeps being a thing, but it does. But we are a small operation here. So I would like to welcome everyone back. It is Sunday here in New Mexico. It is a beautiful day outside. It is always, any day that's under 100 degrees is a good one. But it's blue skies and puffy white clouds, and I have a week of just being able to work from home, which I'm thrilled about. This has been a great week. I just want to download you while I'm welcoming you. Like, if this is your first time, you're like, what are they even talking about? I just want to tell you about our week real quick. Brody turned 17 this week. My oldest son, who is the reason we have a YouTube channel. He is the reason we can trace this moment back to Brody.
I thought it was really funny. I thought it would have been a funny post to post that original, like when we started our YouTube channel. The first time we ever started the YouTube channel was for Brody, and he did a little intro video when he was 7 years old, and it is the sweetest little thing. Yeah.
Well, yes, it's also, I don't know why it is slightly heartbreaking to me. I remember having to shoot that, and he was just trying so hard to do a good job.
Yeah.
My dad, and he was on new ADD meds when we saw him on ADD meds. And he was
made him blink a lot.
My dad, I asked my dad if we could have a YouTube channel. And I just, oh gosh, every time I watch it, it's just it's so adorable to me. So,
but that's how long. So he just turned 17, and that video, was he 7 or was he 9?
It would have been 8 years ago.
He might have been 9 in that video.
Yeah. So, but like a little boy by all accounts, and now he's 17. Man status. So bro turned 17. We had a party for his friends last night here at the house, and went and played laser tag and bonfires and all kinds of stuff. Then I was away in Trenton. So I'm rocking my Trenton, Tennessee t-shirt here. When I was there, this was a gift from the high school principal, Sonia. Sonia gave me this, and apparently I just thought this was such a good lesson. I could have based a whole talk off of this. This is such a good lesson in getting people to pay attention. So they changed the speed limit. I don't know what it was before, but they changed 25. It. And they wanted people to notice the change. So instead of changing it to speed limit 30, which no one would have talked about, they changed it to speed limit 31, so that everyone in the town would both talk about it. They would notice it. It became they also gave me a Christmas ornament of this on a little speed limit sign, that speed limit 31, because it got folks talking, and they're known for this now I don't know if anyone else in the country's ever done this, but in just Trenton, Tennessee, they are known for their speed limit being 31.
I love
that. What a great idea of a slight shift, right? They changed one number, and it is not any more fast, any more furious, it's no safer probably than 30, but they did it that way. And I think that's such a good note to teachers of it's just the little shifts. It's not always the big shifts that make the big difference. So,
well, what is it that you say in your presentation?
Small tweaks make giant peaks.
Right? I love it because I'm yes, they created engagement.
Yes.
You're just such a small, tiny thing, which is kind of what you're always telling teachers to do.
So great great time. I had a couple of other moments this week. So if you were at the event in Houston, that was a virtual event. That was such a fun event too this week where, that stuff. So look, a lot of your schools haven't picked out speakers for back to school. You don't have a keynote. You don't have someone running PD. Reach out. I will send you not only the speaking brochure, I'll send you a trailer video. I'll send you like examples of some YouTube stuff if your admin needs to look at it. And I'll send you an email that is an email template. So you're not sure how to ask your admin. I have a way that we sort of like really looked at of it's basically Mad Libs. It's putting your name in the spaces and places to send off to your admin to sort of start that conversation to see if they have someone. I'd love to come and visit you wherever you are. So we have a bunch of gigs coming up. And I love it every time. This is the best.
All right. You ready to help some teachers? All right. Keys teachers up first, asking any advice on what to assign as 8th grade ELA homework, trying to curb cheating like AI, Googling, or copying each other's work. It's a Title I school, so not enough books or Chromebooks to assign reading.
Okay. So one, there's a couple of different ways you could go with this. And anyone that has, I see folks already asking for information, but if there's a question that like, why is this looking all wacky? Excuse me, folks. Got to do some fixing here all of a sudden. Keeping it real with you. That just looked all crooked to me and stuff. Sorry, are you in it now?
It's
all right.
Okay.
I'll fix it later. But we gotta get in this question. Anyway, I think one is asking yourself, do you have to give homework? Like one, is it required? Two, is it necessary? You know the answers to those questions. I don't. If you're a Title I school, all the Title I schools I've worked in, both of them, and any Title I schools I've worked with, typically have longer hours than public schools. So if your students so when I was in Camden, my students went to school from 7 a.m. Actually, maybe class started at 7:15, right? But 7:15 in the morning, school started. We went to 4, and there was mandatory after-school program until 5. So my students are going from basically 7 to 5 every day. I just didn't give homework, even though it was mandatory. Now, look, I'm not saying buck the system. I'm not saying don't do what your school tells you to do. But it's how long are your students going to school every day, and is it actually beneficial for them, or would they benefit more from having the time off in the evening? One of the things we did in one of my schools was each subject, if we were giving homework, we gave it once or twice a week, but it was scheduled. So like English gave homework, let's say Monday and Wednesday. Science and history did it like Tuesday and Thursday or something like that. We had some kind of schedule worked out so that we knew that that was what was happening. We also did the same thing with assessments, which I think is a really great idea, where you had different days of the week assigned for potential assessments from any particular subject, so that kids weren't getting like 5 tests or 4 tests in a day. That being said, if it's like thinking about the skills your students actually need to study. So a lot of the research would lean towards homework being not very beneficial. That's not 100% true with regards to things like the more math problems you do, the better you are going to get at it, right? So what skills or things do your students need to be studying on a nightly basis that's going to benefit them? So for me, it was a lot of vocab stuff. And it wasn't anything that was handed in a lot of times either. It was like, go home and I want you to study vocab. But I would talk to my students about how I want you to study for, like, exactly break it down how they're doing it. So I used to break it down as the typical load time of a Fortnite game is this long. So could you, and I'm not always suggesting that students are like trying to fit homework in around video games, but I was trying to break down like how long, like if you just did this during a Fortnite load screen time, this is how long, like this is how much studying you could get done. Is there something with regards to, so 8th grade, is it familiarizing yourself with the text? Is it annotating the text? Is something like that? Like, so what do you want your kids to get good at? And then that's going to give you a jumping off point too. Having homework, just have homework, doesn't benefit anyone. And it doesn't build belief in students. So it's really, this is for anyone, like really making sure that what you're giving as a homework assignment is not just because we have to give homework, but because it's beneficial to students. And so that means that I'm not giving, I couldn't stand when my school would be like, I give about like 30 to 60 minutes of homework a night. Well, based on who? Like, who's it taking 30 to 60 minutes? My kids that love reading, kids that are on grade level. Because if I give 60 minutes of homework to a kid that is on a second grade reading level in my 9th grade English class, that looks a whole lot different than, that's like 2 pages of reading as opposed to 30 or to 20 to 15 pages of reading. So that's a dumb metric. So the other thing is, when it comes to not cheating, how can we give something where you are creating something, right? So maybe you're annotating a particular text. Maybe we are finding ways for students to use AI for homework. So I'm not trying to get around AI. I am actually using AI to base something that you are going to, that's like the building off point, or that's the jumping off point. Or can we use some of these things that students like? So, gosh, and that could look like a lot of stuff, right? Like, that's a little bit harder to go into at the moment. But I typically didn't give homework. And when I gave homework, it was studying for things that would happen later in the week, or it was working on creative projects on your own time so that you were building that in. The other thing I like to do as well, the last thing I just kind of want to point out, is a lot of your students aren't going to do homework. So can I build in time in school for homework to get done? So that's why I would allow, like, sometimes during lunch, kids would come in and work on homework. Sometimes it was coming in like after school, and then I would incentivize that. I'd say, if you can give me the homework before you leave at the end of the day, I would give you extra credit on it. So you could get like however many points extra credit, if you like 10% extra credit if you give it to me before you leave. So that means kids could work on their own time before the end of the day, come in, hand it in, and they're great. Or just come in for this little bit of time after school. We'll do it together, right? I'll sit with you all and do it, and you're getting it done, and it's getting handed in early, and you're not having homework that night. So some of those things come into play as well. Very long answer, very short question. I could go on for that for an hour. We're about to experience crazy hair because this hat's going to give me a headache.
Oh, is it too tight?
I had it on too tight.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
Here we go. Now I'm more ready.
Okay, Gian is up next,
awesome.
Asking, what are your thoughts on collaborative planning and PLCs? Helpful, or just dotting the I's and crossing the T's?
Depends on how. I just had a conversation with a principal yesterday about this. PLCs are great if you make them great, and they suck if you don't. I've been in both. I've been in PLCs where it was just like a complaining fest, and everyone just whined and complained about everything. I've had other times where it was really like, we're breaking down homework, we're breaking down tests. I had a PLC once that we literally, like, at one point in the year, everyone brought in their test, and everybody else kind of spoke to like, how can we make this better? And we formulated, my assessments went way next level, where it was broken into sections, and we were asking higher level thinking questions, of not just having it be like an essay, but it was intense. There were ways that we were breaking down lessons. So it was like, all right, how do we get more done in a given day, week, year, unit, and breaking that down. It was really looking at like our curriculum across the board, and were we hitting certain metrics, and like it was intense. That was under Witter. So like my department head was in there with me, and we just took the bull by the horns. I don't know that anybody else was as productive as we were that year. I've had other years where it sucked. I suggest, Gian, I got to a place where it was like, I only wanted to be productive. I'm not coming if it's not productive. And so I had to shift it. So if I knew someone was just going to come in and complain, if I knew someone hated it, I'd find the people that like I either were interested in it being awesome, or I think I could persuade them to help it be awesome. I was looking for that combination of individuals and talking to them before we went in and saying like, yo, like we have to make this great. It just sucks too much when we're just sitting in here and it's not interesting and not fun and not doing something with. Those meetings were as long as they needed to be. So if we had 60 minutes, but we could knock it out in 30, it benefited us to get it done, because then you got 30 minutes of your time left and you could just work on something else or have a conversation. Or if you wanted to complain or something like that, you could do it then. But which meant that was I could leave, because I was not sitting there complaining. There's zero chance that's happening. Yeah. So that's where I would go with that. It's you have to take ownership of it.
That's a very CJ answer.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Can you fix that?
Oh, you have to go back to it.
No, because
okay.
Just look at the little one. I'm just in there too much. Sorry, everybody. I think I passed. Yeah, Catherine's up next. Hi, Catherine. Is asking, I just found out I will be a floating teacher and will not have my own classroom. I will also not have a cart of my own. Any tips on making this challenge an opportunity?
So, Catherine, it is good to see you. 1, 2. Wouldn't it be awesome if you were an actual floating teacher? Like that happened. That would be great. I would suggest, I've had this happen a little bit where like I teach 5 out of 6 classes in one classroom during the day. And then for whatever reason, I'm in some rando classroom in my 6th period of the day. Now, I got that to change. But that's a whole nother, as my wife would say, Reynolds answer of how I got out of that situation. Let me share that first. Gang, if you're in a rando classroom for 1 period a day, even for 2 periods a day, I've had years where like it was about half and half. I've had 3 in one classroom and 2 in other classrooms. I just went to the teacher that was teaching in my classroom, like in my main classroom that period. And I was like, hey, they moved me out of here. I don't know why. Would you mind teaching in this other classroom? And then I made it sound like that classroom was great. And I didn't lie, but it was like, has great windows, has great afternoon light. The air conditioning is good in there. I'm like looking for benefits. Like I'm like a real estate agent. I'm looking for the benefits. It's a unique fixer-upper, that classroom. And before they were all settled, most of the time people were like, yeah. Every once in a while, I'd have some new teacher that was like, oh, I was really excited to teach in your room because it's so beautiful in here. And I'm like, oh, me too. So, okay, you can have this room. But I just go like, it's nothing for the school to change it in the schedule. Like they act like it's a big deal, but it's not. So that's
I think
one
it's
thing.
A big deal when they have to problem solve it. But when you're problem
I already fixed it. All you gotta do is go in Power School and do.
Right. When everybody, all the parties agree, then it makes it a little easier. But what if, are you ever floating? Let me ask, because I have no idea since I'm not a public school teacher. Do you ever float, meaning like she's not in the same room? Like, what if she's in multiple different rooms?
So there's people that are in different rooms all day.
And what if you can't help it and you have to be the floating teacher?
And the fact that you don't have a cart is ridiculous too. Catherine, ask them if you can buy a cart and find out the cart, find out the price, price it out.
Easy for them to say
you can make a cart, right? Harbor Freight has, I thought about making a video about this, but I didn't know if it would benefit enough people for the cost that I'd have to incur. And then what am I going to do with the cart afterwards? But
it's another prop we have sitting around
like
our
another
house.
thing, like Fred standing over there. It's making a cart is you could go to Harbor Freight and get a really cheap tool cart and then just like turn it into like Pimp My Ride kind of a thing. If you don't, I would suggest having a space in that room. So the way I've done this is I just get like one of those metal, it's like a big metal cabinet. Sometimes they're 6 feet tall. Sometimes they're about 3 or 4 feet tall, but I would have my cabinet and then I'd have that decked out. Like when you opened it, it was like a party, like lights came on. I had motion lights from Amazon in there that were just battery powered. open those things up. Sometimes I had music in them. It would be decorated and stuff like that. So that was my section. Other times, I think you could have, what if you could have a corner of the room? Could I have a wall in here? Could I have a section in here where that's my unique classes idea? So I toyed with the idea of going back to a school locally and teaching. This is not happening, by the way, because things changed, but of teaching a singular period at a local school here in New Mexico. And my idea was, if I could have just the back wall, and then what I was going to have the students do is when you come in, you're sitting in your seat. So they all had tables. Can you just put your chair on the other side of your table? So now you're focusing this way, and my wall's right here, right? So like I would have my decor, all my crazy stuff going on just this wall, but it wouldn't distract you during the day probably because you'd be facing the other way. So you're just moving your seat. Could you do something where you have a section of the room? That's what I would talk to those teachers about, and then find a way to sort of replicate that. And again, this is not something you're paying for yourself. Like to get a cabinet or something like that, get the school to pay for it. And look, this is something you can have fun with also, right? Could you find an old wardrobe, right? That like, so you look like you're going to Narnia when your class is happening, or just something that is going to that's going to separate. I've done the one wall idea before, where my first year in West Philly, I was in a very crowded classroom where this teacher brought in he just had tons of crap in there. And I said, yo, can I just have this one section? He said, yep. I cleared all his stuff out, did my section. Then it ended up, this was Witter also. Witter was like, yo, this looks incredible. You can just do whatever you want to the whole room. And I was like, all right, game on. And slowly but surely, I took over the classroom.
Yes, I remember that.
And then they gave me my own class. They were like, this guy needs his own classroom next year. He has enough of his own crap in here.
Right.
Yeah. Good luck, though.
All right. The teaching romance
yeah.
next. I'm not sure that this one is your strong suit, but
wait a minute.
What?
I hope I knock this out of the park since you're doubting me. Hit me with it.
Okay. Might be a boring topic, but I was wondering about how to organize my materials digital without relying on the internet, so I can still access it during a lesson when the internet may not work.
You.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think of how to do it. It's the not internet part, because they pull from so many. I like being organized. I don't know that I don't make videos about this because maybe I should. Because there's so many people that make videos about digital organization, but I feel like they have more classic sense. Mine is just like most other things I do, where it's like, that's a different way. But I feel like there might be someone that's like, that's my thing. You figured it out.
Because you're as weird as they are.
Yeah.
Tracy Pinter said Google Drive offline. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, you can make things offline.
Like you can keep all of your documents in a folder offline.
Yeah. To be honest, I really I'm not a thumb drive person. Where's my camera? I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm not a thumb drive person, but I do like hard drives. Like I don't know what the brand is called, but I think it's WD is their logo. They're like $50, and I buy them on. I had one around, but I buy them on Amazon. I get them in different colors. So I used to buy them all black. Now I started getting them in different colors each time I get it, so it stands out. And then I write on them with a paint marker for what content is on there. I get them for like 1 terabyte. And the thing I like about that is, I'll tell you what, this really was the lesson. When I left West Philly, I had been there for so long at my teaching position. I had stuff on Dropbox, on Google Drive, on my school computer. There was stuff everywhere that it was like one of those, one day I'll get around to doing this. And then when I left that school and I got booted from the Google Drive, I thought I had everything on a hard drive and I didn't. So there's we had initially talked about just creating resources out of my old stuff since I had time now, and tons of that stuff got obliterated and I no longer have it. Now so I think a hard drive is the move. And I'll tell you why also. My daughter's school last year, the internet would go down so often, and then teachers that were keeping everything online were kind of stuck because they didn't have it. So I got to the point, my school would do this too. We'd lose internet for like a week. So I started downloading my YouTube videos when I was at home, and you can either do that legally, like I have YouTube Premium, so I'm allowed to download stuff, or I can also, there's like third party. I won't say it's illegal, but there's third party. I don't know if it's legal or not, that you can use to download YouTube videos as well. And so that no matter what, the kids they would come in, they're like, oh, the internet's down, I guess we're just going to chill today. And I'm like, no, bro, we're 100% ready to go. So let's move as usual. And I would just, it was like a wrench in the spokes of disappointment every single day. They just thought we were just going to chill, and we didn't. So I find that hard drives are the move, and because I can connect them to any computer also, and it's always all there. And then I can separate them in boxes and by year and all that kind of stuff too.
All right. Well, I guess you answered it. There you go.
Thanks.
Good job.
Got any more brain busters for me there? You think I can answer?
Yeah, let's go with the next one. Ruth is up next.
Hit it, Ruth.
Asking, I'm planning for a new job interview related to a supervisory position in school. The school district is focusing on the book, The Skillful Teacher. Any advice how I can nail the answer?
Let me read it again. I'm planning on a new job. Sorry for the dead air. Maybe you could sing a song for a second.
No.
The school district is focusing on the book, The Skillful Teacher. Any idea on how I can nail the answer? I've not read this book. That's part of the issue.
Lopez says if you've never read the book, then say that you're looking forward to reading it to help the school and staff.
I think another way, Ruth, is
read the quick. What's the little?
There's got to be. So I don't know if something like that would have it. I forget what that website's called, but there's websites that break down books and give you like a really brief synopsis of it. You could listen to, I'm sure if you look up on YouTube, someone's done a review on it or talked about it. That's another way to pull from it. And I wouldn't lie to the school about having read it either. I'd say, listen, I saw that you were reading this. I've not read it yet, but it's like I would order it or whatever. Like I'd plan on reading it because it's probably worth your time. But here's what I pulled from the internet, some things, and here's what I think, how my teaching aligns with this, how my classroom aligns with this, what we're going to do this year, like where I think my strengths align with this. I think it's looking for some of that stuff. So it's going into it knowing that, that I'm a willing participant in this. And I think that honesty comes across as well too. So like, that's fine. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go back when we were talking about the cart and you said making a video.
Yeah.
Someone, Kimberly in the comments said, trick out a cart and then do a giveaway for someone that needs it. That's a great idea.
That is a great idea.
I took a picture of that comment because I was like, oh, I got to remember that one.
I don't live near anyone anymore though.
Oh yeah. Shipping that might be.
I don't know. Shipping a cart would be.
Maybe you have to pay for shipping.
But I'll tell you what, if you live within like a 50-mile radius, like.
You're going to deliver it?
Yeah. I'm like, yo, if you teach in Lubbock or something like that, or like.
Don't pick all of Texas. Texas is too big.
Teach in West Texas or Eastern New Mexico.
You're eligible.
All 7 of you are eligible. I don't know, man. So many of our friends work and do what we do in Lubbock. And I'm like, bro, I'm an hour and 20 minutes from Lubbock.
I know, right?
We're doing my neck of the woods. We don't even have woods here.
Is it our neck of the woods? Desert. Haven't even been here a year yet. Okay.
It is. I own it.
Mallory is up next.
Mallory Garrett.
Happy Sunday, Reynolds fam. How are your kids enjoying school in New Mexico? Have you seen any big difference between the public schools there versus the ones in Philly?
Yes.
I would say behavior management and like behavior management is probably the biggest difference. And really, I judge mostly on Marley's experience because Brody wasn't in public school for very long, like up until 5th grade. And then he homeschooled and now back in public school here. But for Marley, I think the biggest difference is definitely classroom management.
Yeah.
Because you have crowded classrooms, one, and then two, you have a lot of kids that come in with like real trauma, like more kids with big traumas. There are kids here that have traumas as well, but the number of them is a little bit less, which then I think it impacts your classroom. Ed, do you think I'm right on about that? Or
yes. I would say though that Mallory, I just let me say it. How do I want to say this? It's almost a conversation I'd have over a cup of coffee better than I'd have online. But I will say that what I've seen is Marley's principal and vice principal last year were great because they chose to be great.
Yes.
And if they're not great yet, I'll say this, right? Like, they have all the makings of being a great school and under great leadership.
It is why we picked that school for Marley. We toured a bunch of schools for Marley, in particular, and it was a fit because what their key things that they valued were all lined up with what we talk about here: having fun in school, building relationships. Now, was it perfect, and did they execute it all perfect? No, but that was the reason. At least they knew what was important. It wasn't test scores and homework and just being rigorous to be rigorous. Like, it was more about the whole human. It wasn't executed perfectly, but at least that's
hard to ever do that.
Sure.
There's still teachers that were struggling, but like the admin really cared. And the level of freedom that the admin gave to the teachers was bonkers. It was like, in talking to the principal, he's like, do whatever you can do to help these kids out. Like, and I'll help in any way that I can. Like, just imagine that, right? Like, for many of you, going to a school where the admin like authentically means do what you have to do for these kids to help them win. And then let me know if you need anything, and really mean it. It's game on. It is game on if admin says that. And so that's what I saw. Now, I don't know enough about the district to know if everyone's like this. But I know that the middle school where Marley was like that. And so I think our kids are going to private school this next year because we like that better than some of the other options.
Well, the other option, like in town, we haven't been there, but every single person we talk to about the schools in the public schools in town, everybody has negative things to say. There are tons of behavior management issues, tons of lack of classroom management on teachers' end, not knowing how to manage a classroom. And that's just like not an environment I want to, if I have the option to put my kids in, I don't want to. And my kids do have some special ed needs. So I need a different environment, and a small school with small classes is what serves my children best. Which is why that's the avenue that we're going there.
So if you're interviewing at a school, one of the ways I find to get a sense of what's going on there is look on their job postings board. The middle school that my daughter came from last year, total, like, super small town, middle school, middle of nowhere, basically New Mexico. And I don't say that demeaningly. I just mean like, it's like small. You got to drive. We have to drive 30 minutes just to get there. And then there's not like a town next to it. It's like, it's another 30 minutes or whatever the next town is and stuff. Zero turnover this year, right? They had to get some new folks in the SPED department because people were moving on because they took like mission assignments in other countries and stuff, but nobody quit last year. The high school that my kids would be going to this year in the town we live in,
lots of openings.
Tons of turnover. So it just, and I'm not even saying like my school in West Philly had a lot of turnover, but I think that was for a different reason. But it does give you a sense of, are the people that have been here tried and true? Do they know their stuff? Are they returning? Do they love the school? Are they like, what? It gives you a sense of the mission different people are on, and some of the troubles that school might be having if there's a ton of postings for jobs in that particular school. It might also show you that they don't update their website too. That could be
we saw that too.
That might be a whole thing too.
Okay, Mr. Bork is up next asking thoughts on student participation in major field trips, such as Washington, D.C., as an incentive for positive behavior.
Yeah. So thoughts on two major field trips. So I think what we're talking about here is like, what should kids be doing while they're on a class trip? That can look like a lot of different things. So I take a lot of trips. This actually came up as a question when I was speaking was it Houston ISD? Was that their district?
Yes.
The other day. And I talked about all the class trips I took. And the person running the room was like, how do you get all of these approved, all of these trips? And I'm like, well, I make it easy for admin to say yes. I price it out. I call and get discounts. Like, we used to do this trip. I think I talked about this in my book.
There's a clarification. Mr. Bork said behavior in order to participate.
Okay. No problem. I used to do this thing where when we went on class trips, I wanted my kids to eat at good restaurants. I didn't want to have to stop at like a truck stop or just eat at like a Domino's or Burger King or something like that. I wanted them to have the experience of going somewhere else. So I would call higher end restaurants in Philadelphia and say, hey, listen, here's my scenario. This is the group of kids. This is how many students I'm bringing in. Is there like 2 menu options that you could create for a price point of like $7 a kid or something? So like I would think about like what the school would give students or how much we'd be willing to pay to have lunch out somewhere. So like, each kid gets $10 at McDonald's or whatever at the time. If it's $10, what can we do for $10? And then I'm telling you, almost always folks would be like, all right, we can do this. So now we're still eating just like a grilled cheese or something like that, but you're in this beautiful environment. And do you remember we went to World Cafe and did this? I do. And the way they cut the French fries or something like that, the kids were like, what is this? And it was like, just the how it looked, it was so different to them. And I remember kids talking about that forever.
Right. It wasn't McDonald's, but it was still on the same level of like a simple meal, like a grilled cheese with French fries or like a burger with like French fries. But the French fries had like, like garnish, or they were like a truffle fry, or like just something a little fancier than what McDonald's could serve
for the same price point.
Yeah.
So I find ways to get people to say yes and make it look like it's so incredible that this is the thing. Oliver Wendell Holmes has a quote, something like, once a mind is exposed to a new thought, idea, or experience, it can never return to its original form. Something like that. And that's something I go off of when I'm talking to administration too, right? So if you're looking for more yeses, it's do the legwork, make it a simple, I can sign off on that, because I don't want to say I'm thinking about taking a trip to Washington, D.C. And they go, well, what would you do? I was thinking about doing this. Well, what does that cost? Well, some of the stuff is free. It's laid out. Here you go. All you have to do is sign it. It's already ready. I did all the legwork. And because I did all that work, it's sometimes a little harder for people to say no. That being said, I realize I'm going to say this on the front end. Some of you I know you have to take class trips with everyone. I could not be more against that, because it limits significantly the number of trips that you can take. It also limits like incentivizing being able to go on trips. I don't want every kid to go on a trip. I want certain trips are for certain kids, certain trips are for certain classes. Certain years I taught like this book with this class, and that led to this trip. And then I read this book with this class, and that led to this trip. So it doesn't always work. And trying to take 150 kids anywhere is a nightmare, because I'll tell you what, some teachers are really good. Y'all know this. Some teachers are really good at managing kids when you're on a trip, and other folks are not. They let kids get away with stuff, do stuff, act a certain way, and then that looks poorly on the school. And then good luck getting invited back to doing that. So I also don't take kids just strictly based on behavior. It is, who would this trip benefit? And then sometimes, so like when we took a trip to go visit this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, this is another story I tell in my book. Gary Vaynerchuk at multi-million dollar marketing agency in New York City, in Manhattan. I mean, it was awesome. And I took dudes that I knew were caught up in the streets. I tell this story in the book. I had a kid that showed up with a bag of weed that had to be this big, and I didn't know about it. It was in his backpack. But upon some investigation, he was responsible for this. So this is what he was doing. This is what his evenings consisted of.
This is side business.
Yep. He had to he was in charge of protecting this. And he's like, I couldn't leave it anywhere. So that's a whole story. That's enough of a reason to just get the book, right? But I knew this trip would benefit him, and it did. It changed his life. Like to this day, that trip was the catalyst for what changes this kid's life. And I've had a lot of trips like that. And a lot of speakers come in and speak to kids where I don't have everybody in the class, because it comes down to not what your behavior is all the time. Can I trust you in the moment? I do not babysit on class trips. When we go to Princeton University, every year we went to Princeton University to go see a Christmas Carol. When we're on campus, after the play, I tell kids, everyone knows where they can go for lunch. I lay it out for them. This is where you have to be when you come back. And I realized this is another thing not everyone feels safe enough with. But like when we go to Brooklyn, we went to Brooklyn for a few years in a row. I just told my kids where they had to be. They put it in their phone so they remembered they could get back there. This is where we're leaving from, and this is where we're going. You can, like, here's the parameters, but like you can go check out these stores or these places and do this stuff. And that gives kids a chance to explore. Now, that's something I felt safe with. I realize not everyone does, but it's never based on strictly behavior. It's who's this for. But those kids have to know, some of them, listen, you're in detention every day. This is what I'm seeing all the time. But I need you to know that this is a trip that is for you. I really want to take you on it. Can I trust you to bring you on the trip? And I let them know about not babysitting and all that stuff. That is some of the conversation that really goes into this. And I don't know that I've ever been really betrayed by a kid that I've taken on a trip. I can't think of something right away of something that like someone did something that was so out of pocket. One kid I took to Costa Rica that I never took him on another trip again because he was out of pocket. Mark. But other than that, it was it. And he wasn't even one of the kids that did I had kids that I found out were drinking later. I'd still take them on another trip. But Mark broke stuff at a hotel, and I was like, "You're done. You're done. I will never take you anywhere."
I remember the Brooklyn trip, and you were like, "Yeah, you guys can go explore and just be here at this time. Note it in your phone." I remember being like, "Are you out of your mind?"
But I want you to think about where I'm coming from that though. I'm teaching city kids that know the city.
I know.
Right? That know that not this isn't their city. They know how to look out for trouble. They know how to behave. They know how to act. They've gone places with me before.
They were of the age to be able to do that. Yeah.
So and even dudes like Shane. Shane was wild. But when I took him somewhere, it was like, Shane,
he knew.
We knew. He's like, Reynolds, I got you. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. You trust me. And they would keep each other in line. So, but if you're coming from somewhere where your students aren't familiar with the city, they are younger, they're immature. I trusted my guys because I knew where they were. But I'll tell you what, that gave me, what I got from that out of them for that level of trust was in school, in a room that everyone else had classroom management issues with those students. Never. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm good. I'll stop talking now.
Ernesto is up next asking, can we talk about connecting to prior knowledge?
Yes.
Is this important for lesson planning? I'm trying to collaborate with people outside in education, create lessons.
So to me, Ernesto, this has to do with connecting students to, when I think of prior knowledge, it's also about what are they interested in. So, and I gave my talk in Tennessee, we had a whole breakout on this the other day where it was how do you find out what kids are interested in, connect what you're learning to that, and then take that to the next level. And there's a lot of teachers that don't like this. There's a lot of teachers that I get pushback from that are like, I'm not interested in learning what kids are interested in. Like, they should just learn in school. Well, good luck. Like I'm not for you. But I am I would argue that you could learn more about fractions by using Lego, and your kids are super into Lego, than you're going to learn any other way. That learning physics through using Hot Wheels cars and looking at Fortnite, right, is like, there's whole YouTube channels that are focused on physics through Fortnite that I would teach through that lens if that's what my students were interested in. If I had younger kids that are super into Hot Wheels, I would teach through Hot Wheels. So like, if I could sit here and talk all day about potential and kinetic energy. I could read the book about it. I could show a video about it that's like, potential energy is the energy stored, like, or whatever, right? But if I just if I had a giant Hot Wheels track from the ceiling of my room to the floor of my room and held a Hot Wheels car and talked about that, right? And the anticipation that comes from doing it, or talking about how can we build enough kinetic energy to make this car do a loop, and having kids problem solve that, I just think your ROI is going to be greater. So I'm not changing the core of what the lesson is. I'm changing my examples and my connection points. So that's what I'm looking for. I think that if you just go on Minecraft's website, they have a ton of lesson plans for every conceivable, like, whether you're an art teacher, a math teacher, history teacher, English teacher, science teacher, no matter what you're teaching, they have lesson plans for that. So I'm constantly just looking for the connection point, right? Why am I teaching poetry and referencing Robert Frost because that's what you read last year? Great, I love Robert Frost, but could I reference, did Taylor Swift do the same thing in her newest, hottest song, right? Is the newest, I don't know, Tyler, the Creator jam, does he use that literary device also, where I can make that connection because I know that's where all my students' heads are? Then here's the other thing that happens. One, this isn't about being cool. So I get a lot of teachers that are like, but yeah, kids are going to try and think I'm being cool. I'm not interested in trying to be cool, right? I'm interested in being relevant. So it's being a student of my students and then being willing to go into the world of my students so that they might be willing to come into my world of education.
The kids showed me, our own kids showed me a video on physics. Alan Becker is a YouTuber, and he just uses like these colored stick figures, and they usually are like into Minecraft stuff, but he's doing a whole segment on physics.
He did one on geometry too that the kids loved.
Oh, it was so cool. Yeah. I watched the whole video, and I can't say I always watch all the videos that my kids show me. I watch a portion of it.
That's not true. We watch all kids. If you're watching this, we watch all the TikToks and videos and Instagram reels you send us.
Well, I do, because those are short. But YouTube videos, well, I'm a better parent than you. I watch them all.
Clearly. We knew that already.
But Alan Becker, yeah, if you look them up, they were so engaging, and it's just these little stick figures, and yeah, they were awesome. It just pulls kids into it's like makes it cooler for them.
Yep.
They find it relevant and cool. Okay. I'm not sure how to say this name. We're going with just AP Does Vintage?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But you act like it was their,
I don't know. You know
their birth name.
Well, I'm so bad. So
parents had high stakes. I was going into AP immediately.
Okay. I left teaching 9th grade this is a multi one, so follow along.
Go ahead.
Left teaching 9th grade at a good zone, a more lucrative city, because the kids in my 3rd period were horrible, and admin was blaming me instead of looking at my other classes. Just as I offered a 7th grade position, a rough part of town, I kept seeing videos of teachers quitting, and I'm worried about going back or staying at this office job.
I
don't think I missed one.
Okay. He was speaking to Lopez. All right. Or they were. This is a really valid question that I've been getting from a lot of teachers lately is, should you go back to teaching? Should you stay in teaching when you don't feel like it is, like when you're worried about it? There's part of that is like the unknown, right? It's like teaching at a school. And I'll tell you this, I see this from traveling around to schools. The schools that have good leadership, not managers. We're not talking about people that are holding the status quo and making sure you send in all your stuff that you're required to send in. It's like people that are really leading schools to success. We're on the road to success, and you're leading the charge. Those schools, no one wants to leave. Like the ones I talked to were it's almost like teacher, like admin will sometimes go like this. They're like, you don't have any turnover. I met a guy last year, and you met him here too in New Mexico. He was like, nobody's left this school in 30 years. He goes, one person died, and that was it. But like, that's it. That was the only, like, someone died 20 years ago.
I couldn't even believe it when he said that.
But he just said it like it was like a, no, why would you even
yeah,
like,
he goes, no, we barely get open positions.
Yeah. So the thing that's so wonderful about that is if you go to a school and they have great leadership, it's awesome. You might also go to a school that has questionable leadership, but they have a really strong number of staff you can align yourself with. So the first thing I do when I go into, even the other day, right? Even if I go to a school to speak and they have me stay for lunch, I don't always eat lunch with who invited me. I want to know staff. So I will stand I get my food, I'm standing there, and I'm looking out over the room to see who I might want to sit with. Where's the energy at? Where are people laughing? Where are people engaging with one another? And most of the time that gets me to the right seat. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'm like, oh, no, we were laughing about this. I got to go. I got to leave. But it's looking around for the right people. Jim Rohn says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. So I'm looking for those folks. The other thing is, look, it comes down to me about where do I feel either, right? So depending on, if you're a person of faith, it's where do I feel called to go? Where does God want me to go? Where do I feel like, where do I hear God leading me to? If you're not a person of faith, but this is still something that's important to you, is to be of good use. It is, where is my intuition leading me to? Don't think intuition is like, it is the thing that if I could tell my younger self anything, one of the pieces of advice is always listen to your intuition. Always. It has never steered me wrong. And do I feel like this spot in this office job is something I should stay at? Like this is for this season where I should be? Or am I feeling a call to something bigger than this? And then I jump and go to that place. Look, what's the worst thing that can happen? You're not going to catch on fire. If this school year doesn't go right, you can leave, right? You don't have to stay. You are not beholden to anyone. And I'll say this to teachers too. I used to think that like it was so horrible to leave mid-year, but if your school is awful, if you are crying every night before you go to bed, if you're loathing waking up in the morning, if you're down in a box of wine a night, it's not worth it, right? Other people's children are not worth your mental health or especially if you have kids. Don't give more to someone else's kids than you give to your own kids. So it's thinking about some of those things, but don't base your last situations, like don't make a decision based on that for your next situation. I had a horrific ending to when I left my school. It was awful, right? But that doesn't make me not ever want to teach again, right? Like if I felt called to go back to teaching, I would, because I know that, just because that, spot sucked, like there's got to be something else that's out there. And I know that there's something else out there because I meet all these great people. So yeah, best of luck to you if you're ready to do it. And look, we have tons of if you need help, like show up at Sunday Night Teacher Talk, show up on the Facebook group. We have courses available and workshops and all kinds of stuff. Like there's aids out there that can help you get through a lot of those tough times as well.
Yes, absolutely. So Ruth Akers was talking about the Skillful Teacher book.
Yeah.
Someone just said that they looked it up on YouTube and there are tons of videos on the book. So that could help
awesome.
as well. Just wanted
to say, I don't know who said that, but the fact that like this is what's happening on Sunday Night Teacher Talk. Mm-hmm. It's not just me talking. It's like people helping one another out. I appreciate you being like a really great example of that. So thank you. That's awesome.
That happens a lot in the comments section.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're not on here live, it benefits even to just like, it benefits you when you're on YouTube to leave comments. Like people see those comments. I think it's so funny when we get to see it on the back end of YouTube. We have something called YouTube Studio. So we see all the comments coming in and out. And I love these threads that happen over old videos where it's like people are going back and forth about something. And I'm like, on something I put out 5 years ago. Yeah, it's awesome. What you got? Man, we're at 56 minutes already. Jesus, flying by.
All right.
It's flying by at 31 miles an hour right now.
Okay. I'm not sure that this is for you, more for everyone in the comments. Patty Cakes asking, are y'all looking forward to going back to school? I have 9th grade orientation on Thursday. Teacher planning week is the 5th and the 9th of August. All students return August 12th.
I love it. Here's my piece of advice. Should you be interested in taking it? I went to breakfast with a principal yesterday to talk about the upcoming school year. And much to my surprise, he was saying he loves when teachers come back before PD. He said teachers often expect to have more time during PD to get their rooms ready, to make copies, to get stuff.
I didn't know you were allowed to go back.
Before. I wouldn't think that at many schools you're allowed. Well, in West Philly, I mean, we were always up in there like 2 weeks before.
We were.
But see if you can go back in early, get your room ready, you get your desk situated, you can make copies. You're like just being in the place so that it's not the mad rush at the beginning of the year, right?
It's like a precursor to the an intro to the intro.
Yeah. It's one of the many things on my teacher summer to-do list, which if you're interested in, I can send you the link for that. It's completely free, but it's like, I don't know, at this point, like 30 things that I would do in the beginning of the year before school starts.
30 things. It's like 3 pages.
It's 10 things a page.
No.
Listen.
It's long.
Anyway,
and there's probably typos in it because I typed it.
It is. But it's like, see if you can go back before 9th grade orientation. And this is for anyone out there, because you just get more done and you don't feel so pressed. And I would argue that folks that are like trying to hold on to every last moment of summer, great. I understand that too. But I found it there was no anxiety going back early. Like I'd have like Van Halen would be like on 10. The kids are up there with me. I mean, our kids would come up and help me clean my room and all kinds of stuff. I love being in school. I love being in school when no one's there, period.
When school's not open.
Even on the weekends and stuff, I'd always be at school because it didn't feel like work to me. It just felt good.
All right, ready for another one?
Hit it.
Elena is saying, heading into my 2nd year of teaching 7th grade.
Yes.
And my kids last year didn't test so well. So now I get an admin who is coming in to help me out this year. Problem is, I did it her way last year.
All right.
Yikes.
My guess is, Elena, that that admin is not going to have time to stay in there. And if you do it, so here's how I would roll this. Partner with them, do what they're telling you to do. Maybe they get to see that their way isn't the way, that it's not benefiting anyone. Maybe there's some tweaks that you can do that are going to help them to see that you're on the right track, and then they're going to leave. Admin's too busy. I've never seen admin sign up to do anything. One of the best administrators I ever worked with once took it on to teach an 8th period class, last period of the day. No, it was first period class. My man made it to class maybe 25% of the year. Maybe it's Nick Pascal.
Oh, yeah.
And because there's too many things going on. There were kids coming in late. There was suspension meetings. There were parent meetings. There's too many things happening that his class got covered constantly by someone else. So it's like they're just not going to be able to do it. I think that it is, but this might be a good thing where they're going to see that this doesn't work. If they don't stay with you and their way doesn't work, it's really trying to think of how you can tweak that experience for the students. So for me, it's like we would identify like really looking at the tests, right? But looking at things like, gosh, there's so many things going through my head. But one of the things is noticing like that my students were having they were not doing well because they weren't doing all the reading. So this was no matter what the subject matter was, they weren't doing all the reading because they got bored. They'd get like a paragraph in and they're just like, start doing answers. And you can tell this sometimes when kids are taking the test online, and it can tell if they're rushing through questions. You can see that, like, we would note this, like 2 minutes into starting, kids were answering questions. And it's like, there's no humanly way that you read through this already. There's not a chance. So that meant that kids were reading a little bit of it, got bored, thought it was stupid, didn't think they could do the whole thing, and then answering questions. The kids that were reading through the majority of the text had way better answers. So how do we help kids to read further, to read better, to get through, to read with grit is how we identified it. And so we started doing work around that. And that simply meant reading more in class, just reading more for sustained periods of time so that it became something normal for kids. So if you have kids that are out of shape and they can't run 10 miles, we're not going to practice running 10 miles. Can you run for 30 seconds, bro? Can you run for a minute? And I get ideas from all different places. I took this from, when I started running, I used a program called Couch to 5K. And it was like, can you run for 30 seconds? Can you walk for 2 minutes? Can you run for a minute? And it built you up, and over 30 days, you were able to go run a 5K race. And I did. And so I applied that to reading. How are we going to do this with low-level readers, with struggling readers, with apathetic readers, to start building this in? And then when we go to take the test, letting them know, like, you got this. Like, this is what we've been doing, right? You don't know this all the time because we've been doing it like the Mr. Miyagi way, but now you learned that we're not just sanding the floor. We're actually learning, like, reading, test-taking karate in this moment. So I would identify those core things, then break it down. And you're not going for everything. But if we can get kids a little more solid in 3 to 4 different areas that are going to ripple out, then you really see changes in your test scores and things of that nature.
Tell me if I'm wrong in this, but I really can't stand when people blame, like, when kids don't test well through, like, any sort of, like, thing that you're doing, and then they blame the teacher for it. It's like,
sometimes. Look, I'll be honest with you. There's sometimes that kids are all failing a class and it's the teacher's fault.
Yeah, I guess.
And
sure, because they're not actually teaching the material right.
But what we have to teach is
but I'm talking about, like, I guess, like, state testing and the, like, mandatory crap that you
it depends on the school though, right?
I was the kid that went through and, like, bubbled. Like, I was like, this is so boring. Like,
so I would say
it meant nothing to me. There was no why behind it for me to do good. Like, or to read that
good
boring,
leadership
long paragraph.
Has told me good leadership has spent time on really teaching kids during the year and not teaching to the test, but just teaching. Yeah. So we're creating a culture of scholarship.
That makes sense.
And of learners. So taking a test is like, well, this is what we do, bro. We work hard and we try our hardest on everything. We've also built a lot of culture around getting kids excited for tests, explaining why tests are valid. And for whatever, like finding the reasons, right?
Yeah.
Not over testing our kids. So they're not taking every single different assessment that we could give them. Even when they're taking tests in classroom, it was like we split it up. So it was like they weren't getting overwhelmed taking 5 tests a day. It was like 1 to 2 a day, potentially even. So you're building a lot of that culture in as well. But some teachers are never taught, like, test-taking skill, like real test-taking skills.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I think that, and I'll tell you who did that excellently was Ed Fines knew the science behind the SAT. So learning from him and him teaching teachers of like, this is how we should be teaching vocab. This is how your test. So like my tests in my class mirrored aspects of the SAT. How many answers I gave, how I gave answers, how one answer was ridiculous, two of them were pretty close, and one was the right answer. And like then going back and breaking down those tests again to have kids look at the tests and be like, I see that a lot of people picked C, but it was actually D, and here was a little bit of difference. So kids were going, oh man. So we weren't teaching to the test. We were teaching like the test a lot of the time so that people understood. But so why does it come down to teachers being the blame? It can be, but it's often because educators are not being taught how to do it. So it's not just like you suck. But it's like no one.
I just think it's so terrible. It's like feels very unfair when it's like a state test kind of a thing when they're like, and then because then that makes teachers feel so anxious, like even going in, like that they're going to be the reason if kids decide to scrap it and just do whatever they want, and then it's their fault.
But if you have good leadership,
I get what you're saying.
Leadership falls on the sword every time. They take ownership for it and go, all right, the teachers aren't prepared. So what are we going to do to help them teach the kids at the highest level?
Right?
Well, it depends on your leadership.
So I have a quick question. It's still in Alina's comment.
Yes.
So what if, because John Lopez said like, what if she is a micromanager, like this person's a micromanager that she's like, I did it her way last year and clearly it didn't work. Can Alina go in and say like, when the admin comes in and gives all these suggestions again, can she say like, I did it that way last year?
You can, but I would say it. So it's saying it's saying hard things nicely. It's not saying this didn't work. It's saying this is what I saw last year. So when I did that last year, so it's going to them with, how do I say it all the time? Damn it. How do I say it? Like go to people, not like telling them what's right or wrong, but with out of curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So
you're welcome.
How do I say, so when, let's say we're beginning of the year, we're planning lessons out, we're planning something out and they're telling you how you're going to run it this year. And you say, instead of I tried that last year and it didn't work, you go, so I'm curious. Last year I ran that play and this is what I saw. How might you do it differently? Or what am I missing in this that is helping, that is making it so I'm missing the mark or the kids are missing the mark? So now this doesn't become a blame game. Someone doesn't feel on defense, right? And these, I get these are mind games, right? But it's the way you razzle dazzle situations that gets you in the door or not. So I will pose that question where I'm not looking, they don't have to reinvent something. Sometimes they don't even know. And so it's going into it with curiosity and seeing what they say. And then that allows you to potentially pose answers. So don't just pose questions and problems. This is for anyone, right? Having some ideas of answers in your pocket when you go into any meeting, right? This isn't working. I'm curious if we could try it this way. And then having the backup, the research, the data, you tried it before, have that ready to bring to someone when you're doing that. And that's how I get more yeses than nos. Leading with curiosity and having some answers with me. And I mean, I've gotten yeses to some pretty big things. I mean, for everything from being able to go to Costa Rica with my students mid-school year, like we missed 2 weeks of school. And they said yes to it because of the way that I pitched it, to being able to teach with who I want in the classroom that I want, the books that I want, the lessons that I want, all because I did the backup. I did the pre-game work to go into that pitch, and I treated it like it was a business pitch.
Yeah, you really make everything when you have to ask your school for anything. It's always, you make it so easy that they just say yes.
All you gotta do is sign.
All the work. Like I didn't come to you with a problem and now I need you to solve it for me. I'm coming to you, letting you know of the problem, but I already kind of solved it for you. All you have to do is just agree.
Yeah, but that's it. Here's how I'm going to solve you have a problem. Here's how I'm going to solve it for you. And all you got to do is sign right here on this check.
Okay. Let's do our last one with Mallory. Is asking, do you have any tips on how to rebuild teaching stamina when you go back to school? I feel like I am just completely exhausted coming home every day in August. That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I know that here's one thing. I was actually just listening to an interview again. Funny enough, in the last 4 years or so, one of my favorite books I've read was Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, right? Yeah, Matthew McConaughey from Dazed and Confused. He journaled for like 30 years, and then he wrote a book based on his journals. And he said one of the things he noticed was that a lot of us journal when things are not going well, when life is not where we want it to be, when relationships aren't going the way that we want them to go. So he started making notes in his journal of noticing when what he calls green lights showed up. So when things were in flow, when life is just going great, you're in love, your work's going well, you feel great. What are the things that I am doing on a day-to-day basis? How am I running my life? And so that I know what works for me. This is a really good idea for educators. How can you be mindful when things are going well of how was I eating? Was I exercising? Was I getting into school at this time and making sure I was leaving at this school? How is my marriage running? How's my relationship with my kids? It's looking for some of those things that are giving you that energy and noting them. Sometimes when things go or aren't going well, it's just shifting and going, all right, but I haven't been eating right. I've been getting less sleep. I have not been giving enough time and energy to my family, to my friends, to whatever else it is. And then, even though it doesn't feel like the right thing to do, it is. So you start doing those things. That's one. Two is, I would say, without a doubt, and I do, for those of you that are new and don't know this, I do a lot of health experiments. It's not even worth going into this. I do a lot of weird things sometimes, but it is when I get enough sleep, number one. Like, whatever that is for you, not feeling bad about it. If it's 9.5 hours of sleep a night, right? Or whatever, right? That is the thing I need to do. So I know for me right now, 7 is good enough. 8's preferred. If I can get 7, so in the summer, I got to roll 7 sometimes because my kids want to stay up late and play video games with their friends. But during the school year, I like to get 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. I find that, Mallory, over several days, I just feel so much better if I'm doing that. And that's even if I work late, if I come home late, if I don't get as much chill time with my wife. The sleep thing is so important. The second is always my diet. And it is, am I eating things that are good for me? And that has a lot to do also, right? Like if I'm eating all the cookies and eating all the ice cream, I just find that, like, look, I'm old enough that like my joints hurt and crap, and like it just sucks, right? Like, so it's doing some of that as well. And then finding something, I find that finding things to laugh at in school helps. Now, look, none of this, not one thing I just said had anything to do with your lesson plans, your unit plans, or any of that stuff. But when I'm laughing, I think, and I've read this in a book somewhere, that happiness leads to success. Success doesn't lead to happiness. And I would argue that fun leads to happiness, and happiness leads to success. That I try to find things to laugh at. I try and find ridiculous things to do at school. I try and find ways, whether it's to prank someone or to have fun with somebody at school or to delight someone with something they like, bring them in a gift or make them something or whatever. Like one year for Halloween, we were at the store and I bought all these little pumpkins, and my kids painted faces on them, but they were like 5 at the time, so they were horrible but adorable at the same time. They were adorable at the same time. And then they wrote teachers' names on them, and I went and gave them to certain teachers, and they loved. I mean, those things. I think Bluth, probably because he just doesn't take care of his room very well, but I think that was there till like it started disintegrating on his desk at some point, and I think the kids noticed the smell. But they loved that, and they still talk about it. Like when I see them, they talk about that time, finding ways to add delight to the days of others. here's what the research shows. You get hit with the same amount of dopamine when you do something kind for someone and surprise them with joy as you do by getting surprised with joy. The difference is I cannot control when someone's going to surprise me with joy. I can control when I surprise someone else. So go to Five Below, go to the dollar store, look for ideas, look for silly things you can add to your day, and then do that. And that, I find, puts me in a better place, puts me in a more creative place, and makes me want to teach my class off more than I would otherwise.
Ultimately, I just think the building of stamina is like, I kind of even just loathe the beginning of the school year starting for the kids, because I'm like, oh gosh, that's like, I gotta get up early to get like my prayer time in and how I want to start my day and all that stuff. I'm like, oh gosh, it's gonna be like just an adjustment, right? Just being tired. But I think it's doing all those things that you said, like being really mindful of what your evenings are looking like, stick to your schedule, like get in as close as you can to that. Like, I require more sleep. I love that I've always been the person who needed more sleep in this relationship. And you keep, like, it used to be like 6 hours, and it was 7. And now it's like, as you get older, it's 8. And it's like, no, you can't get closer to mine because I want to be the person to go to bed earlier.
But I think my output is higher, right? Like going to the gym, working out 5 days a week, like you're tired at the end of the day, right?
I don't work
now. And being here in New Mexico, like we're at over 4,000 feet in elevation. And it's hot, man. That really takes a toll on your body. So like when I mowed the lawn the other day and I was so exhausted afterwards, I'm like, this is like no joke out here. Listen, gang, before you go, if you're not a part of it, we have a Facebook group that is a really, really great Facebook group that if you're not a part of it, it is just for teachers. There's no brands in there. No one trying to sell you anything. So that exists as a really great resource. Also, I wrote a book several years ago. It's called Teach Your Class Off. It is available on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. I wrote it for people like us, gang, like the folks that show up on a Sunday to watch something like this or listen to a podcast like this. Is a book that takes I have over 800 videos on YouTube right now. It breaks them all down to the core values of how I run my class and how I run my life as an educator. So just so you know that it's out there. And if your school's looking for a book study or something like that, that exists too. And look, if you're looking for speakers, hit me up. I'd love to come to your school, and I'll even give you the email template so you can break it down for your admin as to why we need to kick the year off like this. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else?
Nope.
Cool. We'll see you next week, gang. Peace.